All right. Hello and welcome to episode 129 on the Healthy Runner podcast, where we help you get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury-free running. We are turning the tables on our very own host today. I'm Allie Eldridge, the person you don't see behind the scenes, editing all of the episodes, and I'm taking over the mic today for an Ask Duane episode to answer all of your running, health, and other fun questions that you submitted and wanted to ask Duane. If you didn't know we were doing this episode and you had a burning question for Duane, then make sure you're following us on social media, either on Instagram at SparkHealthyRunner or subscribe to our email list on our website at sparkhealthyrunner.com so you get notified when we do the next Ask Duane episode. We would like to do these about once every quarter because we know you have such great questions. And if you are wondering, it most likely another runner is also wondering the same thing. So welcome to your own show, Duane.
Wow. Thank you for the introduction. That was awesome. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you for having me on the Healthy Runner podcast. This is awesome, Allie. I love it. Great intro. This is exciting. I like doing these. We've had a lot of questions in the past, and I know people have tended to like to listen to these episodes when I look at the analytics. So I want to try to get these in there on kind of a somewhat routine basis where it's not a specific kind of focused topic, that we're really just asking any and all questions. So for anyone who is hopping on here on the live and you want to still get your question in, we may be able to get to it. So drop it in the comment box if you're within our Healthy Runner Facebook group on the live.
Awesome. So we always have new listeners checking out the podcast or joining our Healthy Runner community on Facebook. So I'm going to start the show just like you do for every episode with a little dynamic warm up, our favorite thing. So do you mind just sharing with our listeners who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm Dr. Duane Scotti, avid half marathoner. Got a half marathon coming up this weekend. Let's go. Running physical therapist and coach and host of this Healthy Runner podcast, and founding owner and creator of Spark Healthy Runner, where we really help runners get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury-free running with the perfect online running coach, even if you've been told to stop running with an injury in the past. That is me. And I'm just super excited for anyone who's listening to this, maybe the first time or you're new to our audience. I am entirely grateful for all of you for listening and allowing me to actually do this. And because this is my passion, this is what I love. Just really passionate about helping runners learn, proper techniques, proper health related topics, how to train in a safe, healthy way, but still be able to be competitive and get stronger and run faster. So super passionate about it. And I am grateful to have you guys here joining us for this ride. Yeah. And actually, Allie, you need to share with all of us, because the last time that you were on the podcast was episode 100. And that was back in December that we hit that milestone. And when we talked back then, you weren't even a runner at that time. But since then, you now have completed your first ever 5K. So I would love for you to kind of update us on how your first time ever doing structured running went, doing a 5K. Yeah. What did you think about that whole experience?
Yeah, so it was definitely an experience. I ended up loving the training of it. Coach Kat came up with a plan for me, and it coincided just super well with my dancing at the time. So it was nice to have that outside of work, because I work as a dancer. So it was, I was doing all that and I wanted to have something else to do that wasn't my work exercise. So it was nice to turn running into a hobby. So I was able to do running 3 times a week on the treadmill to start. And I was doing the run to walk plan. And there were a couple days at the start where I was I can't do this. I literally can't do this. And then I just continued to believe in myself, and I ended up being fine. Ended up getting hurt in the middle of it at rehearsal. So I had to take a little while off, but then got back to it, which was really nice.
So this was a dance related injury, not a running related injury.
No,
okay.
It was a dance.
All right. Just want to clarify.
Yeah. A dance related mess up, which was sad. But I'm fine. We're back. We're healthy. We're good. So, finish out training, and then right before the 5K had like a breakup happen. And I texted Duane and I was like, I'm not doing it. And he was like, okay, I really want you to think about it. Like, and I texted Coach Kat too, and all my friends, and they were like, absolutely not. You're doing it. Like, you're doing it. You'll regret it if you don't. And I woke up the morning of the 5K and I was like, I'm not going. It's not happening. And then, so I wrote this start time of the race was like 8:36, maybe. I think I threw off my covers in bed at like 7:50. And I was like, you're going. So I went and I did it. And it was great. Now that I'm reflecting on it, like I definitely want to do it again with a different morning prep because that morning prep was rough, but it was very spontaneous. And I didn't want to let those months of training go to waste. And Coach Kat told me that once I do it, it's mine and nobody can take it away from me. And those words like echoed through my head the entire time I was running. And for a girl who said she would never run, I was really proud of my time and I was really proud that I finished. And now I caught the bug and I'm running again and it's great. And I'm really happy that I did it and that I didn't give up on myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, we are super proud of you. I think many of us can relate to kind of going through hardship, struggles, personal life, and, it affects kind of running. And you ran through, the hardest parts of the year, the cold parts of the year. You did a lot of running on the treadmill initially, and then had the struggle of like now running on the road and how that feels different and the adjustment. And I'm just super proud of you for doing it because I know how hard it was for you just emotionally, like that you literally had that happen like a day or two before the race. And that you actually did it. And like you said, no one could take it away from you. So you ran a 5K, you are now officially running. And I love that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Maybe the next time we do this, we'll be sharing more about your running journey. But if anyone is listening to this, and let's say you are like super new to running, like Allie was, and you thought you can never run. We actually shared Allie's full journey on kind of Allie being a dancer turned into a runner, or Allie's going to run her first 5K on our Instagram page. So at Spark Healthy Runner. And if you go to the videos section and you'll see there's like topics, and you'll see actually, you could just pick like the Allie, runs her first 5K topic, and you can see like literally Allie kind of documenting her journey like each week on, what she struggled with, what she was feeling, when things went right, when things went wrong. I think it will help you in your journey if you are just starting out. So you might want to check that out. But yeah, thanks for doing that. And thanks for being a good sport about sharing your experience. And yeah, we look forward to seeing your future running wins as you move along in your journey.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited about it. So for my running brain, let's get into these questions so I can learn some stuff too. So our first question, Susanna from our coaching program asks from Instagram, what is the best foot strike for running?
Great question, Susanna. Thank you very much for asking that, because we get that question a lot. And I guess I'll give you first the answer of in terms of like injury reduction, or is there a difference in injuries, running related injuries, with different types of foot strike patterns? And the answer to that, based upon the evidence that's available now at this time, at the time of this recording in May of 2022, there is no differences in terms of foot strike pattern that's been associated or linked with increased running related injuries. However, we do know that we see different types of injuries with different foot strike patterns. Usually we see more knee, hip, lower back related pains and injuries in those that are heel strikers, and those that are toe strikers. So let's go to the opposite extreme. So there's really basically three main types of foot striking pattern. Either you strike with your heel, you strike with your midfoot, or you strike with your toes first, and you're like a toe runner. The toe runners will definitely have more foot related types of injuries. So metatarsalgia, Morton's neuroma, maybe plantar fasciitis, maybe bunion pain, first toe pain because it's rigid and you don't have enough mobility in your first toe. So we tend to see those types of injuries. So, that's kind of from a research standpoint. However, I will say, Susanna, based upon a lot of the research out there and a lot of the running experts that I have talked with, or conferences I've went to, there is a pretty clear consensus that most running experts would favor someone to have more of a midfoot strike pattern due to the decreased ground reaction forces that come up through your foot and ankle up into the lower leg, and up the shin. So like if you get shin splints, right? Like there's definitely going to be decreased forces that are transmitted through your body by doing a midfoot strike pattern, as well as usually most people who are midfoot strikers will not be overstriding. And really overstriding is one of the kind of things that is associated with a heel strike pattern. So even for preventative purposes, now even my mindset has shifted a bit in these last couple of years after more and more running experts that I have went to conferences and heard from, and the majority of them really feel strongly that even if you don't have any injuries, that it is better for your long-term running health to convert to being a midfoot striker. However, I do want to say, like, are there elite runners who are heel strikers and they're elites and they're absolutely phenomenal? Yes, of course there are. The majority of us listening to this are not elite runners. We're the recreational runner. And I do feel like long-term running health, you're going to be better off in the long run if you can adopt more of a midfoot strike pattern. And the other caveat I'll add to that is it takes time to change and adapt and change your running form. And there are different drills that you can do. There are different progressions. There are different variables we can play around with your shoes and your heel drop that can help transition to a midfoot strike pattern. And I know for me personally, it took me years to do that. So if you are thinking about considering, because of what I just said, and it's like, hey, you should be a midfoot striker. I'm not saying that will reduce your injuries by any means. And I'm not saying that you should start adopting that now and start adopting it while you're in like peak training and you're running hard, fast runs and really long runs. The best time to change that is kind of right after you're coming off your off season and your mileage is lower and you're not running a lot of hard, fast workouts. So that's kind of the best time to make like drastic changes to your running form. So I guess I'll kind of give that little bit of advice there. But yeah, I would say that the majority and consensus of most running experts would probably say it is favorable to have more of that midfoot strike pattern.
Awesome. Super interesting to hear all that. And I was going to ask you like when the best time is and everything, but you got there. That's good.
Nice.
So from our Healthy Runner Facebook community, Lisa H wants to know, how do I increase my stride without overstriding and without decreasing cadence?
Okay. So I think the question is really like increase your stride. So you have like longer strides. Maybe you can be like more efficient, I'm assuming, and maybe faster. But you don't want to overstride because you heard overstriding is bad, which you're right. That is where your foot is actually landing out in front of your knee and your foot's actually hitting the ground and your knee is like way back behind that, because that's like running like with the parking brake on, essentially. So I agree that we don't want to overstride, but you also don't want to decrease your cadence. So you want to try to maintain a faster cadence. So there's a couple of things. Is number one, to prevent overstriding, there are a couple of cues that you can think about when you're running, and just think like knee drive, like leading with your knees, like knee drive, as opposed to reaching out with your foot and trying to like stride long. And that's when most people kind of think, hey, I need to open up my stride to run faster. Let me stride long. And then they wind up overstriding. So trying to think of that cue as the knee. And then I like to think of it as like running on hot coals, and just thinking leg turnover. So as soon as your foot hits the ground, pop it up, pop it up, pop it up. And then, we have tools now. So we do have tools of, looking at cadence on your watch, especially that's going to be a little bit more accurate if you can use a heart rate monitor that is going to track that. So, myself, I've been trying to increase my cadence little by little, and I'm especially aware of it during my slower runs, because that's when it can tend to go a little bit lower. Most people, when they run faster, so if they're doing a specific workout, a tempo run, an interval run, races, obviously, your cadence is going to naturally increase. It's hard for most people to maintain a high cadence for an easy run effort. So when we're running at a slower pace, so just thinking of foot hit the ground, it's like running on hot coals, like pop it up, pop it up, pop it up, and then just drive with your knee to prevent that overstriding. Drive with your knee, lead with the knee. So when your foot hits the ground, the knee is over that ankle. But yeah, there's actually more. We got into this really in depth in episode 117 with Dr. Doug Adams, so fellow PT, running expert. He had amazing tips on different types of running form. So Lisa, if you haven't checked out episode 117, I would definitely do that. You will find some really helpful tips that Doug shared as well. And I will drop that link to anyone who's listening to this, either video version or the podcast version, within the show notes.
Awesome. So off of that, what does the heart rate monitor have to do with knowing the cadence on the watch? Are they connected?
They are. Yeah. So external heart rate, great question. External heart rate monitors, even though they are not 100% accurate either, they are better than just getting your heart rate off of your wristwatch. Depending upon the person, I've heard little tips of like having your watch a little bit higher up on the wrist helps with the accuracy and keeping it tight. So if it's like super loose on your wrist, it's not going to be that reliable in detecting heart rate and even cadence. But basically it's tracking your steps, and it would relate to your arm swing essentially. So it's tracking your cadence, but the heart rate monitor does have, and I can't think of the word, whatever it's called, like a pedometer essentially, like you can put in your shoe if you want to like track your steps, and it's calculating kind of your bouncing, like the up and down movement. So that's just helping kind of track every time you hit the ground, and it gets vertical oscillation. It gives you like all these kind of analytics essentially that like Garmin tracks or whatever watch that you're using track. So it is a little bit more accurate, and you can get more analytics with the heart rate monitor strap. So I'll tend to, use those if I really am trying to do a good job at keeping my heart rate down for those easy runs, or I will definitely use it for my harder runs. So my workouts, so tempo runs, threshold pace runs, or interval runs, just because it will give me a little bit more accurate pacing, as well as, cadence, and looking at some of the other analytics.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. So from Facebook Messenger, the question is, do you have any suggestions for runners' trots? I can go to the bathroom 2 to 3 times before a run and still get hit by them.
Yeah. So the good old trots. This is, definitely something that plagues many runners. And, I guess the first thing that I want to mention is, if you do have a diagnosed or undiagnosed, GI disorder going on, that would be the first thing I would definitely clear. Like, I know there are many runners who have Crohn's disease, and, depending upon when they get flare-ups, and there are different, gastrointestinal diseases, disorders, that you can get these patterns where you cycle in, days or weeks where you have a flare up essentially. And running, I think it's really the up and down bouncing type movement that can get the motility going in your GI system. And unfortunately can have to, you're like in the middle of a run and then boom, it like just hits you and you're like, oh my goodness, where in the heck is a bathroom? Right. And you're trying to find one. Like if you've been running long enough, like this has definitely happened to you. Like I've definitely been there before. It is not fun, not comfortable whatsoever. And it's like, it can be really hard to like continue to run to wherever you need to run without having to go. So this is something that, like I said, is fairly common. It just depends upon how often it occurs, right? So I know myself personally, it's like if I get a GI virus or a GI bug, it's like for the next week or two, even though I don't feel like I have a fever, I'm sick or anything, my GI system's still messed up when I go out for my runs. And it's just, yeah, it's terrible. The biggest thing I would say, beyond if there is a true GI thing happening, like first off, go to a GI doc, like get evaluated, make sure there's nothing else going on, right? That could explain some symptoms of an actual disorder that could be treated a certain way. I am by no means a GI specialist, but I would say if it is something that maybe you have gone to a GI doc and they're like, hey, everything's normal, all tests came back negative. I don't know what it is. We do know that anxiety can increase this. And we actually just talked about this in a recent episode, episode 127, with Coach Kat and Irene Bosco, who is a mental health expert. And she shared kind of 5 ways to deal with race anxiety. A lot of people, when they are more anxious, then they'll tend to go to the bathroom. So that's why we always recommend like for races, because everyone's got a little butterflies going on in their stomach for a race. That can cause your GI system to stir up and you might need to go. And sometimes you don't realize it until you start running. And so just like kind of the runner who asked this question said, like trying to go beforehand and then definitely planning out like the nutrition aspect and dialing that in and, trying different things that work for you from a GI standpoint. In generalizations here, this won't work for everyone, but, definitely staying away from, number one, the fatty, greasy, fried foods, spicy foods will certainly irritate the gut. I've been there before, had a dinner out at a restaurant late night, had some beverages, and then the next morning that run, I was like running to the bathroom during the middle of my run, right? Like not fun whatsoever. And then you learn from those experiences and like, hey, if I really have a run that really matters to me and I need to get this long run in and or a race, this is what I don't eat, right? So, and you kind of learn. So those foods would definitely not be good. And then the other thing is like high fibery foods. So, you want to think about, especially if you get up really early to run, your dinner before, especially if you eat a late dinner. If you're eating at like 7, 8, 9 at night and you're going to bed like an hour, 2 or 3 after that, we want more faster digesting carbs versus like high fibery stuff. So almost think of it like a race prep and think easily digestible carbs, blander the foods, usually the better on the gut. So, they're not going to be flavorful, but usually they'll settle in your stomach a little better when your stomach's bouncing around. And then the other thing is also training your gut. And this is what I learned from Clara Bartholic, who is on the podcast before, kind of the plant-based runner. She shared tips of like training the gut to actually tolerate regular food. And I actually started implementing that after that episode because I was always a drink or gel person for fueling before my runs. And then I started doing like medjool dates and I use my UCAN almond butter with some medjool dates to give me some energy before all of my runs now. So I fuel for every run, no matter if it's like an easy effort, hard effort. And in the beginning, it was weird because my stomach wasn't used to it. But like she had mentioned, it's kind of like training your muscles. You can train your gut to actually tolerate foods and then go ahead and run. So I would say that and take baby steps. Like start out with a little bit, like literally 1 medjool date, right? Or half, or like half a piece of toast or half a banana. Starting out with those kind of little bits to allow your GI system to kind of test the waters, see what it can tolerate. And then you can always increase from that point. But yeah, you're not alone. Number one, we've all been there at some point in our running journey. And yeah, it's definitely not fun by any means. But those are some of the things. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Basically, to summarize there, make sure you're properly evaluated by a medical professional to make sure there isn't any other disease, disorder, and this could be the beginning symptoms. And then make sure the anxiety stuff is taken care of. Are you anxious? And if you are, that could be contributing to it. And then think about what you're eating and nutrition wise, even the night before a run, the morning of a run, especially if you're having irritants like maybe too much caffeine and you're drinking too much coffee right before you go out for a run. Those are things that can kind of stimulate your GI system.
Awesome. It's so interesting. And I'm on TikTok all the time scrolling, and I always come up across these things on healing your gut. And I think it's so interesting to hear how it even plays into running and how your stomach handles food. And I love what you said about train your muscles, you can train your gut. It's so interesting. So interesting. So the next question is kind of another health and wellness medical question. But Chris from our Healthy Runner coaching program, and I find this so funny because this happens to me when I dance all the time, doing a turn, and I'm like, but any tips and tricks to help with exercise-induced rhinitis, which is a runny nose?
Nice. This is great. This is a great collection of questions because I'm always talking about Achilles tendon pain, hamstring tendon pain, shin splints, runner's knee, IT band. And yeah, this is cool. So we could talk about some other stuff. Right. So a runny nose or rhinitis, honestly, I needed to actually look this up myself, Chris. Apparently there's a lot out there. If you just search, and Chris is a medical provider, so he could do a little, article search here. There's actually a bunch of literature out there. And apparently the most common cause is allergies. So allergic rhinitis is the most common cause, and it is triggered by those things that cause allergies. So environmental, usually, like pollen, dust, dust mites, and that's the most common form, and that usually is associated with allergic conjunctivitis or watery eyes or itchy eyes. My eyes are probably red right now because I have allergies, and this is the season right now where I'll have some red itchy eyes. Knock on wood, it's actually hasn't been that bad this season, to tell you the truth. So I don't want to jinx things, but other forms like non-allergic causes of exercise-induced rhinitis is really somewhat of a mystery, apparently. And there are some other causes, such as chemical irritants, fumes, strong odors that can just irritate your nasal passages. So then it's just a matter of decreasing your exposure to those irritants. Then apparently there is a emotional induced rhinitis caused by stress and emotions. Seriously, no joke. And actually a 2014 study revealed that people with higher stress levels experience more runny noses, coughs, and congestion than people who had less stress. So more of a reason to work on our stress reduction techniques and do some breathing techniques and reduce some of our stress. And then there's a vasomotor rhinitis, which is a catch-all category apparently of non-allergic rhinitis. That is basically when all other forms have been ruled out. So it sounds like most likely, Chris, you're probably having somewhat of an allergic reaction. So I guess my question to you is do you have allergies, right? Do you have springtime allergies? Are you allergic to pollen? Because that will stir it up. I know for me, that's definitely the case. So I am allergic to grass as well as trees. And I have actually been seeing an allergist for probably a decade now. I actually used to start out with the shots, and then really we maxed out on what that can do. So now the last couple of years, my allergist basically sets me up with an allergy plan every single year. And it's more of a proactive prevention type plan where I take montelukast basically to help with breathing the night before. And then I take a nasal spray, and then I wind up taking eye drops, and they're all basically allergenic medications that I just get from my pharmacy. And knock on wood, that's been working out very good for me. Is my nose still runny in the springtime more so? Absolutely. Especially I've been really working on my breathing technique and using my diaphragm, especially my easy runs, where I'll literally close my mouth and see if, because I was a huge mouth breather, Like, I think that's all I ran. It was like mouth breathing. It was like, see, like smoke coming out of my mouth. So now I'll like actually close my mouth and just focus on breathing through my nose breathing, and using my diaphragm. And unfortunately, that does kind of cause more like runny nose. So I hear you, Chris. It's definitely a little bit of a struggle. The one thing that my allergist actually recommended to me is, if you could run, and especially like most of us experience this with COVID, especially initially, if we were running outside, like trying to run with a mask, never worked for me. However, that was like before my breathing got a little better. So it'd be interesting to try again. But she did say that she has some runners who run with like more of the sports kind of running mask, like that Under Armour makes. So perhaps if you wanted to decrease your exposure to allergens, then you can use a mask, and that might help you a little bit. Again, for me, it's like trade-off of like how hard is it to run on the mask, and how much is the runny nose bothering you. It's kind of a little trade-off, but yeah, it's kind of unfortunate because most allergens are more predominant in the air in the early morning hours, which is when most runners run. So yeah, it is a tough time. And if it's a real windy day and the pollen count's higher, maybe consider, if it is a big issue, doing a treadmill workout that day, and or changing your plan to where, hey, there's like humidity coming in or a rainstorm coming in that's going to knock all the pollen out of the air. Then maybe wait for that to like get a hard workout or like a long run in. Maybe try to plan it around the weather and the pollen counts in your area. But hopefully that was helpful for you. I am not an allergist by trade, nor was I a GI doc, but I can give you my best informed research answer.
Love that. That's interesting to hear that like other uses for the masks than just like obviously what we've been using them for, and how you can like implement them with like exercise too. But I know recently like the pollen has been so bad. Like I walk outside and my car is just covered, and like it's horrible right now. So the runny noses are, yeah,
absolutely.
Good time for allergic runners.
I know. I actually had a mask before COVID started. I had like an allergy mask. I found one at Lowe's because I love gardening and landscaping, and like I used to cut my own lawn, and now I just don't have time. So now I've unfortunately hired someone to do it, but it's been actually a blessing. So now it's gotten some more time back for me. But when I was doing that and mowing the lawn and the grass is flying around, I was like sneezing every 2 seconds. My eyes were look bloodshot all the time. So I did use a mask, actually. They make like specific allergy masks. And yeah, that was before all of COVID. And yeah, That was like the first mask I used when COVID first happened.
Oh, wow. So interesting.
Yeah.
Love it. So this is a little bit of a story, so stay with me.
Love stories.
Caroline, it's good. It's a good chunk. Caroline, who is an email subscriber, sent in this message. She says, "Hi, Duane. I have an overuse injury from a year ago, pubic ramus stress fracture to be exact. Since recovering, I have been only running 3 times a week. I did a 10-mile run a few weeks ago. Good job. And have continued my PT strength training regimen and will continue and expand this. Before the injury, I was running 30 miles a week, no strength or cross training, and not being mindful of fueling. So I learned a lot through my injury and won't be going back to my previous ways. My question is this: when can I start adding in another day or so of running? I now do 2 shorter runs during the week and a long run on the weekend. I do cross training in between and definitely get a rest day in, which I never did before. I am afraid to add another day because my PT made me feel that running more than 3 times a week isn't a good idea. But I think a short 3-mile run thrown in there could be fine. What are your thoughts about this? If I add more, I would continue my regimen of strengthening exercises, cross training on other days, ensuring I am not under fueling as well as rest days. Best, Carolyn."
Wow, what an awesome question, Carolyn. And first off, like, kudos to you, because it sounds like you really educated yourself and really made positive changes to your health and running regimen. So I love that. Because sometimes it's even hard for us to make changes, right? And obviously this was something that really forced you to make a change in how you approached running. And I love that you're looking to do it in a healthy way. So first off, thanks for your question. And I guess to answer your question, there's a couple of really what we call positive prognostic indicators here, meaning like there's a positive outlook for your running in that, number one, your stress fracture was a year ago. So that's a long time ago. Your bone has healed. Your bone has healed literally after 6 to 8, maybe 12 weeks after your stress fracture to begin with. And it sounds like you've done a nice, steady, progressive increase. The reason why people do get stress fractures is essentially we're overloading bone at too fast of a rate than it's ready for. Could there be nutritional things that are happening where you're deficient in certain nutrients? And fueling possibly was a contributing factor as well. But we've basically overloaded bone too much. The bone said, what are you doing? Like, I am going to react back to you. And first it starts with a stress reaction and there's inflammation. And then that progresses if it's, that stress isn't really taken down a notch and then results in a stress fracture. So as long as you don't have a huge spike in training load, meaning you go from, let's say you did a 10 miler, you're doing 2 shorter runs, let's say to 3 or 4 milers. So you're doing essentially like 16 to 18 miles per week right now. If you're like, all right, I'm doing 16 to 18 miles per week this week, and next week, I'm going to go back up to my 30 miles that I was doing. That'd be a huge spike in training load, right? So as long as you do it in a slow, gradual, progressive fashion, and it sounds like you've taken care of your fueling. It sounds like you've been doing great strengthening exercise, which is help stimulate bone formation, strengthens your bones, strengthens your muscles in and around your bones. That's going to be protective for you when you're running. So there's decreased stress through your bone. So all of those are great things. I think it is perfectly fine for you to increase to 4 days a week, unless there's something else that you're not telling me that your PT knows, because they will know your past medical history and how you've been feeling and what you're actually doing. So I will never say that my thoughts here are going to trump someone who's been working with you closely. But in general, most runners, I do always like to encourage them to bump up to 4 days of running per week. It's going to be rare that I have someone stay at 3 days. And the reason for that is it's going to be more protective for your body to actually run more frequently throughout the week than infrequently. So, 4 days is usually a minimum for me. If someone's running a 5K, first 5K like you, Allie, 3 days plan, yes, absolutely. But once you've been running for 6 to 12 months, there's no reason you shouldn't be running 4 days a week. But remember that running doesn't need to be 5 miles every single day, right? You might have a 2 miler in there. You might have a 3 mile, right? Like they're not going to be 3 days of 5 mile runs and then a 10 mile run on the weekend. So there's a science to how we build up our bodies and tolerating the demands of running. And you want to think different training cycles and building up different goals. You want to think each day has a purpose, whether it's an easy run, whether you're going to work on some faster running and do a specific workout. So all of those variables change and they add variety to the stresses in your body throughout your week. So it winds up being more protective, increasing to 4 days than staying at 3 days, especially, Carolyn, if you ever want to run a half marathon, which I'm assuming you're doing a 10-mile long run, like you can run a half. It's really hard to train for a half on a 3-day plan. Have I had runners who have done it? Yes. Could their performance be better if they bumped to 4 days? Absolutely. I almost want to say it's virtually impossible to run a marathon on a 3-day plan. I've had runners that I've worked with that they literally couldn't do a 4-day plan because their job was so demanding. And, they were a surgeon. They were like working overnight hours, on-call hours, and just their schedule was absolutely chaotic. And even though I built a 4-day plan, they never got in 4 runs a week. And it affects performance for a marathon. So it's almost virtually impossible if you want to run a marathon a safe way and build up. So increasing to a 4-day plan, I think will actually be more protective for your body in the long run as you continue your lifelong running journey. So thanks for your question, Carolyn. Great question. And I love that you've really dedicated to kind of switching things around in your training and your outlook of running. So very, very, really good experience for many of the listeners to learn from and to kind of prevent, right, a stress fracture from happening in the first place.
Yeah, awesome story and awesome answer, and good luck, Carolyn. So Michael from our Healthy Runner coaching program submitted a few questions via email. He says, I hope all is well. I hope I'm not too late. My question that I hope will help other runners in our sport community and anyone else dealing with challenges. Okay, he says, what is the total time frame for complete healing from a lower extremity tendonitis, no pain, back to 100%? And then also, why does it take so long for tendons to completely heal?
Okay. So yeah. So Michael, thank you so much for your question. Coach Kat and I are extremely happy with your progress. You are just crushing your training in our program. I'm just so happy for you to be running really essentially pain-free at this point when you were struggling for so long. So really the question relates to tendonitis, total time frame for complete healing, no pain back to 100%. Man, that's so tough to answer, Michael. I'm not going to lie. I'm not trying to dodge this question. I will say that Achilles tendon and hamstring tendon, proximal hamstring tendinopathy, in my clinical experience, has taken far longer to heal versus a posterior tibial tendon, or let's say you have patellar tendinopathy or tendonitis, or what's another example? We have peroneal tendonitis. That's another running related one. Those are going to be your common culprits because they are different forms. So first off, the Achilles tendon is a specific, it's unique versus any other tendon in the body to begin with. So there are different layers to the tendon of the Achilles, and the blood flow is extremely poor in the Achilles. And that's really the answer to kind of the second part of your question is, why does it take so long for tendons to heal versus other areas of the body versus a muscle? Let's just compare muscle to tendon. So for those that don't know, tendons connect muscle to bones. And unfortunately, that's where, we get these tendinitises. I'm just going to call them tendinitises for now. But I think another part of Michael's question will kind of clarify that progression. But the tendon itself is being overloaded. So it's fighting back and saying like, hey, there's too much load that's happening here. And, part of the reason why they take a while to heal is because we have to decrease pain levels first and then allow them to regenerate, essentially. So we need to actually build up load capacity in the tendon to tolerate the demands of running. And this does take time. And really, tendons do not have great blood flow. And then specifically, the Achilles tendon doesn't have hardly any blood flow compared to the others. And it's a huge tendon. It's a long tendon. So it's kind of unique in that fashion. And that's why it takes so long. And then the other part of your question, is why they take so long to heal. I kind of covered that. And then really kind of giving you like a time frame. Like how long? It's all going to depend upon how long you've been having the tendon pain. We do know that, Michael, the longer the tendon pain that you've been dealing with, if you've been running through it for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, it's going to take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years to finally be back to 100%. So if you get an acute Achilles pain, you've only been having it for a month. It's like you join our Healthy Runner coaching program. I'm like, piece of cake. First month, we're going through our restorative phase. Guaranteed, you are going to be pain-free. By the end of this first month, we go through this restorative phase. By the second phase of our program, when we start to rebuild your body to get stronger and tolerate the demands of running, you're not even having Achilles pain. However, if someone comes to me now, they've been having Achilles pain for 9 months, I'm telling them, okay, the first 4 weeks of us working together in this restorative phase, we're doing specific exercises for your Achilles tendon, other exercises based upon the problem areas that we assessed, then your pain levels are going to come down and I'm going to keep you running. So you're not going to have to stop running. So your pain levels, if they were maybe a 6 out of 10 at worst, they're going to be down to like a 3 range. And that would be my, prognosis and expectation for 4 weeks. And then, in another month, you're probably going to have it down to a 1 or a 2. And then, in another month, you're going to say, I'm going on some runs that are like totally pain-free. I forgot I even had an Achilles problem. And then in 4 months of us working together, you're going to be like, I literally haven't had pain. There was this one day I went for a run and it was a little hilly. And then my pain came back and reminded me, hey, I still have this pain. That's all normal. That's all normal how tendons progress in this recovery process. It's not like kind of turning the light switch and one day you have pain, next day you don't, and then it's like healed forever. It is this process. And the thing we want to kind of be mindful of is how long does your pain last when you do get an increase in pain? And then really what's your recovery time after that? Right. So did you feel pain just for a couple of minutes during a run, or did it start and then you felt pain the whole rest of the run? After the run, the next, morning when you got up out of bed, was it still painful? So those are all the things that we kind of adjust your plan, whether it's the run plan, your strength plan, your specific exercise you're doing for that tendon based upon that response. So it will be variable. And I'm sorry, I can't give you a total time frame for complete healing, but I will tell you from clinical experience, the longer you've had the problem, the longer it's going to be to get rid of it. And then Achilles and proximal hamstring tendinopathy can take up to a year or sometimes even 2 years to totally never feel it ever. Proximal hamstring tendinopathy, and I had that issue as well. It's kind of like one of those things, you get rid of it with running, but then you feel it. If you sit for a long period of time, it will kind of come back and let you know. The key is doing your long-term management. What are the specific exercise you need to do to help stimulate that load to the tendon to build up the capacity in the tendon? So that's kind of the key there. And then I think Michael has a second part, right, Allie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is. So he says, can running through soft tissue injuries help speed up recovery of soft tissue injuries, tendonitis, tendinopathy, tendinosis? Is there a clinical difference in your professional opinion between the three? I think a lot of runners may eventually suffer from the above, so this may help clarify and prevent Dr. Google searches. I know you and Coach Kat have helped me in this manner. I'm going to attempt to attend. I'll be at my son's sporting event. Hope you're here. And then he says, thanks again, Duane, for being in our corner. Adult runners just don't have a lot of professionals such as yourself to encourage continued running. I appreciate the structure and coaching for my rehab, Michael.
Oh, awesome.
So
well,
sweet.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, no, thank you for that. And yeah, heck, man, you got to be at your son's game. You got to be there. I'm always there for my girls for their games and events. So I'm glad that you prioritize that versus actually tuning into this, and you can catch the replay. So yeah, this will be, hopefully you're enjoying the replay as you're watching. And by the way, if anyone's listening to a replay of this video, whether it is on our Spark Healthy Runner YouTube channel or on Facebook, let me know in the comments, just put in replay. I would love to see how many people are catching this video version on replay. And to kind of answer your question, I guess I'll clarify some terminology that you will see out there, because Michael brings up a good point, a tendonitis versus a tendinopathy versus a tendinosis. So I guess I'll bring the umbrella term first is tendinopathy, which essentially means disease of a tendon. So it's pathology of a tendon. There's a tendon problem, tendon pain. And then it's a matter of, is it acute itis? So is it an active inflammation? And this typically is going to be more time dependent. So it is usually you were totally fine. You went on a run that had a bunch of hills in it. You pushed it a little too hard. You felt a little tweak in your Achilles. I keep using the Achilles example. Let me use posterior tib example. And now you have some pain. And maybe there's some inflammation. Maybe you notice it's a little warm. It's a little hot. It just feels pain with every step you take. It's inflamed, right? It's like this itis. Most runners, you do the initial kind of rest type of, elevate, ice it. You can do those things, anti-inflammatories. And typically, if you do get that type of tendonitis, it will feel better the next couple of days. And if you do the proper management and you don't avoid doing everything, then that will probably go away. But the more common scenario, that's the rare example, by the way. And we find that in our younger runners. So anyone who might be listening to this that is running cross country, right? Our high schoolers, our collegiate athletes who get right back into a semester, get right back into the school year, and they didn't run over the summer. And now it's the first week of school. Oh yeah, we got track practice right after school, or cross country practice right after school. And oh yeah, we're going to run 5 miles. Oh yeah, and tomorrow we're going to run 6. And next day we're going to run. That's when you can get this acute tendonitis. Most runners listening to this, I'm assuming you're going to be adult runners, and you probably have this nagging pain that's been kind of around for a little bit. You've been ignoring it. You've been hoping it goes away on its own. It just, you used to feel it like maybe when you've just started first running, and then it loosens up and it feels better as the run goes on. And now it's starting to hurt also at the end of the run. And now it's starting to hurt like when you get out of bed first thing in the morning. And now it's starting to hurt for like every type of run. So it's this like progressive fashion that this pain builds. And really what's happening is your tendon has some dysfunction in it. Maybe it started out as this inflammation, but now it's become this tendinosis where we're getting these degenerative changes to the tendon. And it's just this repetitive trauma, we'll call it, and your body's trying to heal, and it's throwing down some scar tissue essentially. So this is like what we call the proliferative phase of healing. We're throwing down fibrin, collagen, and your body is trying to heal itself. But the problem is it's throwing down tissue and healing that is not favorable, that can't withstand the loads and demands of running. So that's where we need to really build up the tendon capacity. And that's where, kind of going to your question of, is it helpful to keep running essentially to speed up recovery of soft tissue injuries? In the case of the itis example, which is more the rare, probably people listening to this, running through that will not help that heal. So you will have to modify. I didn't say stop running. It depends upon, again, the severity, right? If someone's limping with walking, I'm not going to have them run. But if they can walk pain-free, and we can try doing a run walk, perhaps, then I would try to do that. For the OSIS example, most of my runners, I literally will rarely ever shut them down. The one case that is pretty tricky is the less common insertional Achilles tendinopathy or tendonitis, tendinosis, where it's right on the bone, where you can have this little bump back there, this Hageland's deformity. I have worked with a couple of runners that it can be irritable and it can be stubborn. So you might need to be a little bit more aggressive in holding them back with their run plan versus the more common example where people get their Achilles pain, let's say 2.5 centimeters from that bone, where it's more this mid portion of the tendon. Those folks, I really rarely have them stop running. Maybe we take away some speed work, decrease some long runs in the beginning. But once we get in that restorative phase and actually do the specific exercises that is going to stimulate healing to the tendon, then they do quite well with the running. And I do agree with your point, Michael, that actually running is, helping with the healing process because we're adding load. And as long as we're doing it in a progressive fashion, then that's helping this tendon build up capacity. But there is specific loading exercises for each tendon of the body that you would be prescribed by your rehab provider with the goal of stimulating healing, not just strengthening muscles or even strengthening tendons, but the loading of a tendon. Actually, it's like this process called mechanotransduction actually stimulates healing of the tissue. And it's actually the best thing we can do for chronic tendon pain and these tendinopathies or tendinosis. It's the single best thing you can do is stimulate healing through loading of the tissue. It is the game changer. So there is no fancy device, brace, whatever treatment of choice. And I used to do it all. Like when I was seeing a lot of patients as physical therapy clients, dry needling, Graston technique, ART, whatever, like cupping, whatever you want to do to like a soft tissue. Those things will help short-term pain relief, but long-term healing of a tendon to allow you to run is through loading the tissue. So I hope that's a great topic. And I agree. There's a lot of runners that, you do the Dr. Google search and it's like regurgitated blog information from big hospitals, essentially, that have a lot of outdated information on how we treat tendons nowadays. If you go to a sports medicine rehab provider who's been up in the literature the last decade or two, they'll pretty much reiterate what I just told you. But you're right. Dr. Google can be dangerous at times. So great question. Hopefully that was helpful. And I appreciate you and I appreciate your kind words.
Awesome. All right. A couple more here. So Gina on Facebook Messenger says, how much should she be running, cross training and strength training between cycles? Want to stay fit and not lose my progress, but I don't want to go into my next cycle too tired.
Great question, Gina. So the question is, you just finished running your first half marathon. Kudos to you. So proud of you. And now you're between training cycles. So you're just wondering about how much do you run? How much do you cross train? How much do you strength train? And your goal is to stay fit and not lose your progress, but you don't want to go into your next training cycle too tired. So excellent question. Excellent points. The big key to allowing that is what you want to think about, which is what you're already doing, Gina, is thinking about training cycles. And, you had a half marathon training cycle. So now your goals and your focus should shift, right? When you were training for your half marathon, the goal and focus was, yes, getting you stronger so you can do it healthy, but also really ramping up your long runs, right? Getting into those double-digit long runs. So right now, that is not the focus. The focus should be on building your body to be stronger, more resilient, so it can tolerate the demands of that next training cycle, if it is going to be a half marathon that you do in the fall. And this is the time to double down on your strengths. So this is actually the best time to really make sure you're doing solid strength work, because as you get closer to your peaking for your next race, your next training cycle, your runs are going to get harder. Your weekly mileage is going to peak. Your long runs are going to peak. So that's a lot of stress to your body. And that's where the strength training actually comes down. So now that you have this like base level of fitness and strengthening, right now is the best time to even get stronger, progress your strengthening a little bit, and build your solid running base. And what am I talking about? You're basically in base training phase right now, Gina. So that's really where we want to focus on your weekly mileage and getting that up to a higher point that's normal for your body than it was at when you started your last half marathon training cycle. So let's just say, and I can't remember what your weekly mileage was when you did first start our program way back when, if you were doing 10 miles a week, right? Like now you want to think about, hey, when I start my next training cycle, I want my body to feel like totally rest, recovered, rejuvenated. It feels normal to run 15 or 18 miles per week. And then you start your half marathon training cycle and you build from that. So now we're always kind of taking our base level of fitness and we're just raising it a little bit with each training cycle. And how we build that base up is during this base training phase where you're not focusing on speed. And I know you weren't focusing on speed for your first training cycle, but right now you're not focusing on speed. You're focusing on just building up that weekly base training where it feels comfortable for you. You shouldn't be having pain, things shouldn't be hard for you, but you're comfortable with it. And then that's your new level of fitness for that next training cycle. And then you go through a progressive ramp up for like a marathon training cycle. And then in that next level, so for you, that's when we start to add in speed work, because now you've done it before. You can run 13.1 and you have this nice base level of fitness. So now we add in some, tempo runs, and we're doing these like faster intervals for a specific time period or we add in interval runs, which is shorter time period and maybe running faster. So there's different ways that we can add in speed work into your run plan and then change the focus of your strength training at that point. So hopefully that was helpful for you. There's a huge resource I would highly recommend to anyone who is wondering the answer to Gina's question. We covered this in depth of like what is base training. And that was actually the first episode that I did in 2022 to kick off the new year. I know I have to think about what year it is. So I will definitely drop that link to that episode in the show notes to this episode, because it was super helpful, super informative. So that's episode 105 for those listening on the podcast. Check that one out. And then there's also another episode in there linked that I'm referring to this concept of training cycles that Gina is asking about. So that will be super helpful to check out the training cycles episode as well. But yeah, episode 105 or that video, check out that to learn more about how to structure your base training phase. Great question though, Gina. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So last two questions from our audience. Jean in the coaching program sent a Facebook Messenger with two questions. The first one is, now that it's vacation season, do you plan your routes ahead of time or do you wing it? And then do you have any favorite apps for planning? That's all part of one question.
Okay. So great question. Jean, thank you so much. Yeah, vacation season. Hey, I am a big vacation guy. Like, we love to get away. Do I plan my route? Well, see, it's hard to ask me this question personally because I don't plan my routes ever. I'm not a route planner. I'm an out and backer. I never do loops. For some reason, loops always make me feel like I'm running longer. I'm more of the out and back kind of guy. So I usually like exploring. So I go out. If it's a 4-mile run, I'm going out 2 miles in one direction, turning around, I'm coming back 2 miles in the other direction. So I kind of know where I'm going. If I am on vacation and I don't know my surroundings, usually I like to ask the hotel staff, like, hey, which way is the best way to run out of here? Because sometimes you could run into like the bad part of the neighborhood where you're like, okay, it's a little shady around here. I don't feel too safe, right? So you kind of want to make sure you're going in the right direction. But that's what I do. But I know many runners love planning their routes ahead of time, and they'll do like map my run. I personally have never done that before. Like, I've never literally like mapped out my route ahead of time. That might sound strange to some runners, but I don't. Like, around my house, I've been living here for I should know the answer to this, like 18 years. So I've been literally like checking out all the different areas from my house, all the different options. I've done them before, and so I kind of know, like, hey, this is where I want to go for like my shakeout run before my races, because it's like this nice scenic area, and that's like the only road I ever run down. It's actually called scenic, and that's the actual road I run down before my races, because I'm kind of like superstitious like that. Or this is the route I do for my weekly runs. I run this way out of my house, and I do these kind of side streets, and then I get on the main strip fairly quickly because I run early, and a lot of times it's dark, so I get to where the street lights are pretty bright, and I'm running like on a straightaway essentially. And then on my week end runs, my long run, I'll go a different pathway. So I'll run some more side streets, and because it's usually lighter out when I'm doing that. But yeah, I've never actually mapped my runs out, but map my run apparently is a good, I'm sure there are many others now. I bet you could probably do it on Strava. I have no clue. That might be a stupid response for me to say because I really don't know. But I feel like there's many people who are listening to this. If you guys are watching the video version of this, like, let Jean know, like, type in the comment box what you do, because I don't do this. I'm sure that will help her. Yeah. And then what was the second question Jean had?
So she asks, are there any areas you should avoid rolling out or using the hypervolt, so the machine gun on?
Yeah, so like a massage gun, essentially, like the percussion gun. Love those, by the way. Big fan of foam rolling. So are there any areas you should avoid rolling? Yes, absolutely. So the areas that you should avoid rolling are areas that are not soft tissue. That might seem self-explanatory, but it's not, because let me think of some areas that's common sites. Is a good one here, right? IT band. Everyone like knows about the IT band. Should you roll it? Should you not roll it? There's some controversial topics to that, whether to roll, to not roll. I like rolling, but my caveat to slightly in front and slightly behind the band to cause a decompressive effect. So I don't go directly laterally for the kill, where it's like super painful. So I'll adjust and roll slightly in front, slightly behind. There's my take on the IT band. I got a video for that. If you want the video, just type IT band into the comment box. But when people are rolling their IT band, if you go higher up on the hip, there's this bump on the outside part of your hip. It's called your greater trochanter. It is a bone. There's a bursa over that. If you roll over that, you're going to piss it off. It's not going to be happy with you. It's going to be painful. And you're not doing it any justice rolling over it. Like, it's not doing anything but irritating it. So you want to avoid that bone. Definitely avoid that bone if you're rolling on the side of your hip. So usually what I'll have people do is roll out the TFL muscle, which is actually connects to your IT band, which is right above that bone and slightly in front. Roll that out first, release it, and then adjust your foam roller to go below that bone on the side of your hip so you don't roll over it, and get kind of like, I don't know, the more your mid thigh area versus like the upper thigh, outer thigh. And yeah, like the big thing is like bony prominences essentially. So if someone was like rolling out their shins because they had some shin splints, if you go too high, you're going to hit like the fibular head, and there's a nerve that comes out over there. So you don't want to like just roll over your nerve, because then you're going to start feeling tingling in your foot and ankle, which wouldn't be a good thing. What are some other common sites? You know, the proximal hamstring tendinopathy folks, they want to roll where it's painful. I'm not a big fan of having my client roll that on their own and probably just irritate it, even though it feels like it wants to be rolled. So I will go slightly below that area and tell them to roll, and then roll the whole muscle belly of the hamstring. And because there is a bone there, your ischial tuberosity, there is a bursa there. And yes, it is a tendon problem usually. That's the cause of that. And I just feel like most of my clients who try to roll on that, like they literally sit on it and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to roll this painful spot out. It's kind of like you're just rolling over your ischial tuberosity and your bursa, which probably isn't going to do much. If anything, it might irritate it. Those are the big ones. It's really a matter of like not rolling over bony prominences. I guess the exception to that would be in the mid back area, your thoracic spine. Love rolling thoracic spine. Big fan. Gets us out of the sitting posture, working on our computers, feels stiff, helps our running form, gets our chest out. So that you are rolling over your spinous processes. So those are bones, and that's okay. And usually if you arch over that foam roller, you'll get some pops in there, you get some releases, and you'll get increased mobility in your thoracic spine. But yeah, I think the big one's the side of the hip, the greater trochanter area. That's probably the big one that you don't want to roll over. But great question.
Yeah, super interesting. Maybe like weirdly uncomfortable to think about rolling over like nerves and bursa and stuff.
That's not fun.
No. So I actually have a question from me that I came up with today during my run.
All right. Let's do this.
So right before we started this tonight, I actually went for a run. I wanted to get it in today, even though it was like blistering hot out. So I waited until the end of the day. I did plan that because I figured it would be a little less hot out. But I felt like I was running through molasses, and I felt like I was going so slow because it was so hot. And I literally said to myself, I was like, don't try to go fast. Like, just go slow, like go to slow pace. But I ran like a 15-minute mile, and which is like not what I do. And I was literally thinking about it while I was running. I was like, I'm going to ask Duane tonight because it's Ask Duane. So what's your best advice for running on days like today with like running in the heat, especially with summer coming up? It's going to get hotter. What is your go-to method and advice?
Yeah. So I guess first off, everything you felt is completely normal.
Oh,
that's
good.
what you should feel during your first runs in actual heat and humidity. It feels like crap. It feels like you're running through quicksand. Your legs are heavy. Your breathing is all off. You're like overheating. It sucks. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It does take our body like a good, I've seen some people reference different, like 2 to 3 weeks to really adapt to like running in the heat. And for us on the East Coast here in the Northeast, at least, not in Florida, in the Northeast, it's tough. Like this time of the year, when you get to like spring, late spring, early summer, we get like these spurts of like 2 to 3 days in the 90s, and then we'll have like days in the 70s. So, your body really doesn't adapt usually around here until like July, August, when you're having consistent humidity, consistent heat, and then it adapts. It feels better. So it is going to get better. That's the good news. But it is a matter of, you got to hydrate more. You have to think about your electrolytes more. You usually have to think about your nutrition a little bit more, like when we talked about earlier, in terms of like what you're eating beforehand. Usually when it's that hot, people will get nauseous, and you don't want to go running like a full belly, right? You don't want to like have lunch and like a full lunch and then try to go for a run like a half hour later, right? You want to have like a light snack, 30 minutes or an hour or two before, especially running in the heat. I find that we don't tolerate like being full and running. So yeah, it's a matter of like electrolytes is the big one to add in, where in the winter running, we don't need electrolytes at all because we're not sweating that much. But in summer running, you're sweating a whole lot. You lose electrolytes through your sweat. You need to replenish them. And that is before your run, during your run, after your run, especially for your long runs. So that's like the big key ingredient there. And then just, trying to pick the coolest parts of the day like you did. I don't know, man. I'll see people like out there running at like midday, like 12, 1. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they don't have like that's the only time they could possibly run. But yeah, that is tough. And or they're like training because they're going to run a race that's really hot, then it's smart to train in those conditions. But for the most part, you want to try to pick that coolest part of the day, early morning or in the evening when things start to cool down a little bit. But everything you experience is totally normal, Allie. It's like, I'm really nervous because I haven't had that happen yet this year. And I do have a half marathon this Saturday, and I'm hoping I don't feel that for Saturday, and fingers crossed the weather works out. It's looking pretty promising right now. But if it's hot that day, I'm going to be screwed because my body hasn't heat adapted whatsoever.
Right.
Like it just has happened where we've had like hot days and they haven't been my long run days or even my speed work days. So I really haven't run in heat yet this year, but I know every year it sucks when you get that like first long run that's super humid, super hot. You just feel everything that you felt.
Yeah. Good to know.
You're not alone.
Not alone. I think that's the fun thing about like being a beginner runner too, is that like I do things and I'm like, no, what's wrong with me? But like, it's so like validating to hear that like not alone, not everybody goes through it. So before we end, I have some lightning round, just like fun, get to know Duane questions.
Okay, cool. We'll spark lightning round. I like it.
Yes. Okay. So what is your favorite vacation spot with the family?
Definitely anywhere where there's a beach. And then I would definitely have to say Disney. We're big Disney fans. So don't judge. I know it's like weird. There's like either Disney lovers or Disney haters. And that's fine. Like if Disney's not your thing, I completely respect you. I understand. But yeah, we love Disney. We've always loved Disney, the family. We've pretty much went every year since the girls have been born. It's been a little bit now since we went last. My wife's like itching to get there. But we love Disney and we love beaches. So like we've been really like really trying to explore all the beaches kind of on the East Coast. So we've done Myrtle Beach a couple of times. Last year we went to Outer Banks, North Carolina. So OBX, that was probably our favorite, honestly, beach that we've visited so far. We did Old Orchard Beach in Maine, which was nice, and water is way too cold for us. Even in August, it's like, does the water ever warm up here? No, it doesn't. And then we live in Connecticut. So like Connecticut, I'm sorry, I don't need to offend any Connecticut residents, but we really don't have beaches here in Connecticut. Being from Long Island, New York, like the sound is not a beach. So what actually my wife and I did this weekend is we go to Rhode Island. So we'll go to Westerly, Rhode Island, near Musquamacut there. We'll do one of the private beaches in Westerly, kind of near Watch Hill. And that's our jam. It's an hour and 15-minute drive. It's worth driving another 30, 40 minutes to actually have like waves and like real sand and not rocks and shells and not like the Long Island Sound. So yeah, that's what we'll do on, if we want to go for a quick, is like go to Rhode Island. But yeah, we're actually going to try out a new one. I'm super excited about that, is try a new state in Maryland. So Ocean City. So we're going to try that out, in a couple of months for July 4th. Yeah. July 4th week, we'll be there. So follow along social media. I'll keep you guys updated. Go for some runs along the beach, there. But yeah, big beach, fans.
Awesome. Okay. So I know you're in your crazy 6-week Quinnipiac semester that you teach. So how do you unwind and relax after that?
Oh, that's when the vacation's happening.
Oh, well, that would be how.
Yes. That's what we did last year. That's when we went to the Outer Banks. So absolutely. Yes. It's vacation time, beach, starting to read more. So getting into reading, getting into calming down at night, getting off my computer, off my phone. So I apologize if you send me a message or a DM late night and I don't respond. It's because I'm trying to wind down and decrease stress levels, anxiety, all that fun stuff. But yeah, that's awesome. My unwinding.
Awesome. Okay. And then what was your latest Netflix binge?
So definitely Stranger Things. And at the time of this recording, it just came out literally a couple of days ago, and we finished all 7 episodes last night. So
in one day? Did you do it in one day, or did you guys
no, we didn't it was over the weekend. So it was like 2 episodes each day at nighttime. We got to just kind of relax, and that's been the latest. But yeah, we enjoyed like the Ozark series. That was another big one that just came back recently. But yeah, Stranger Things is
my mom and I watched it in like a day.
You watched all?
Yeah, my mom watched all 7 on Saturday, and then I didn't finish them until Sunday. But she's like starting to text me, and I was like, "Don't say anything." I was like, "Don't ruin it." And
Ramona,
then so I was like, "Do not ruin it." And then on Sunday when I finished it, I was texting her, and I was like, "Plot twist! Oh my god!" And she was so like, we don't want to do any spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it, but that was one heck of a plot twist at the end, and I need July to come because
definitely
I need to know what
favorite episode was that 7th one. It was masterful. That's all I have to say is so kudos to the writers. And I was not expecting, not just, like when you're not expecting an ending, but just how in depth and it really was, it was impressive. That's all I have to say from a creative standpoint. It was very impressive. I was impressed.
Yeah. So it was like all connected, all amazing, all wonderful. So
yes, indeed.
Yes. All right. So thank you so much for allowing me to play the role of guest host. I love doing this. And ask you all these questions. Yeah, this is so much fun. I love this. I'm sure that the answers are going to be super helpful for runners out there wondering all of the answers to these questions. If there was someone who listened to this and one of the questions resonated with them and they want to learn more about working with you, or they would like to learn more about how you and our team of healthy runner coaches help runners overcome sticking points in their health and their training, how can they do that?
Well, thank you for asking that. The best way to just do that is just to go to like learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com, and then that will get you our coaching program. It will get you our free ebooks. If you do /coaching, that will talk exactly about how we work with runners. So learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com is really how we work with runners now, whether or not you are struggling with some of the pains that I mentioned in this episode, or maybe pretty much this was an interesting episode. We talked trots, we talked like rhinitis, like runny noses. We talked, I feel like a lot of different running form, not too many injury stuff besides tendonitis, tendinopathies. But if you have one of those stubborn tendinopathies and you haven't been able to get the help that you're looking for, whether or not it's just in your area, there's not running experts. And that's why I love what we do online now. It's because we're helping runners all over the country and the world. So shout out to our across the pond runners. So we got a bunch in UK, Australia, Scotland, Denmark. So yeah, it's really amazing to be able to help people where they're at, right? Because everyone doesn't have a local running, physio and coach in their areas. So, that's how we help runners now, is really get over those aches and pains or, points in their training. And you just don't know how to structure your run plan properly or your strength plan properly, and actually do strength exercises for runners, because it is different than a normal boot camp class, CrossFit class, general exercise for fitness. So runners should be training differently. So that's what we do with runners. So you can check that link out. We'll put that in the show notes, of course.
All right. Well, thank you to you, the listeners, whether you're listening now during your run, watching the video version within the Healthy Runner Facebook group, or on the Spark Healthy Runner YouTube channel. We appreciate all of you. Make sure you go ahead and follow our Instagram account. It's at Spark Healthy Runner. And remember, every week we do these podcast episodes live within a Healthy Runner Facebook group. And we would love for you to join us and interact and ask your questions for all of our guests, not just Duane. You can learn more by checking out the events tab within our group, and you can see all the guests and topics that we have lined up for upcoming episodes. If you like this episode, then you will certainly like the next video, or tune into episode 100, where we did this the first time on the Healthy Runner podcast. He shared his story about how he started running, how Spark Healthy Runner has become what it is, and where he sees it in the coming years. All right. So we're all set today, but thank you again, Duane, for having me on and having yourself on, letting me have you on. And just remember, guys, stay active, stay healthy, and just keep running.
Bye.